I'm Jared.
And I'm Mike.
And this is Posting Through It Bulletin. We're trying something new here. This is going to be a shorter episode focused on giving you the information that will hopefully help guide you as the weather warms up and we enter into protest season. A lot of crazy shit in this country right now, and I think people are going to be active. The Trump administration's given us no sign of backing down from its authoritarian push across the U.S., which all but guarantees that we're going to see more conflicts in the streets with Trump's paramilitary forces. It's almost inevitable. And we've seen in Minneapolis and other places as well, what they did to Renee Good, what they did to Alex Preddy. These people are capable of killing. But they've also expressed a desire to stamp out anti-fascist activism, which can theoretically include anything that opposes their autocratic vision for the country. That puts a greater scrutiny on communication between organizers and protesters, which is what this episode's going to focus on. As tensions grew in Minneapolis and protesters, community organizers, activists responded to the administration's violent, ill-fated Operation Metro Surge, influencers claim to have, quote-unquote, infiltrated signal chats used by people on the ground there by joining these groups where links were publicly shared and then posting screenshots, screen recordings, and all kinds of outlandish commentary about what those chats contained.
Right, Jared. And it's important to note that these anti-Antifa internet performers, who are essentially interchangeable, and if you're listening to this in the future, there may be new ones I haven't even heard of yet. They are not particularly gifted sleuths, generally. They have a tendency to lie and self-aggrandize. They aren't journalists. What they do is designed to serve themselves financially and to please authority, i.e., they don't speak truth to power, they distort, tattle, and they flatter powerful men. They are in no uncertain terms, and in a literal sense, professional bootlickers. One of these guys is a big chungus named Cam Higbee. We have covered this guy on PTI before. Higbee claimed to infiltrate so-called Antifa networks on Signal. Influencers like this call protesters terrorists. That's the way they describe people who are law-abiding protesters. And they steal that language from the Trump administration itself. He unveiled his findings about the Minneapolis protests in January 2026 on Benny Johnson's show. Benny Johnson, another influencer, said, "This is clearly a coordinated infrastructure, and we'd like for the feds to take a crack at trying to get rid of this infrastructure the way they approach the mob or cartels or other terrorist networks," right? By the way, the mob, okay? This is the anti-ICE protests.
There's no credible evidence of technical hacking or covert access beyond simply joining these chats like any other user could. There's no reason to think Cam Higbee pulled off some sort of technical feat that allowed him to get into it. But law enforcement is now looking at both the communication practices and the public claims these influencers are making. FBI director and frequent PTI punchline, Kash Patel, announced on the same podcast hosted by Benny Johnson that after seeing Cam Higbee's post about the signal chats in Minneapolis, he asked the FBI to open up an investigation.
We immediately opened up that investigation because that sort of signal chat being coordinated with individuals, not just locally in Minnesota, but maybe even around the country, if that leads to a break in the federal statute or a violation of some law, then we are going to arrest people. You cannot create a scenario that illegally entraps and puts law enforcement in harm's way.
So understandably, this has made a lot of people nervous. A lot of people have questions about Signal. There's some bad information, some bad advice going around. So on this one, we've got Bill Budington with us. He's going to talk through how to use Signal effectively during a protest and in a way that doesn't put you in danger. We want everyone to stay safe here. Safe from a blatantly corrupt regime that equates their dissent, their dissatisfaction, their outrage, their anger with terrorism. Safe from far-right influencers who would not hesitate to ruin your life if it meant content they could profit from. And thought it'd also just be helpful to give you some general background about what Signal is and how it works exactly. Bill, thanks for taking some time to join us today. A lot of people have, I've certainly seen a lot of people getting a little antsy about Signal, maybe not fully understanding it. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us and kind of explain to us what it is, how it works, and if people are considering participating in a protest or doing some kind of activism, what they need to know. So first, I just want to start off, what can you tell us about Signal and its origins?
Yeah, so Signal came into being as kind of a combination of two apps that preceded it. And they were developed between 2010 and 2015. The one app was Text Secure, and that was text messaging, encrypted text messaging. And then there was also Red Phone, that was encrypted calls. And they merged to form Signal because all that is incorporated in Signal. And that merger happened in around 2015. So yeah, that's kind of was developed by Moxie Marlinspike originally. Yeah, just kind of was handed over to its own nonprofit in I want to say like 2017, around then.
So when you say encrypted, maybe this is really basic, but just to break it down for people so they understand what that actually means. When you say text messages or phone calls are encrypted, what's actually going on there?
What encryption means in the most basic general form is that a message or some communication is being scrambled up, and the only way to unscramble it is to have some secret key that you're able to unscramble it with. Basic encryption, so if you go to a website like Google or EFF.org, you're gonna go to that website over what's called HTTPS. And HTTPS, that S stands for secure. That's accessing the website over a protocol that allows you to communicate with it in a way that your, say, coffee shop hacker isn't able to actually intercept and see that traffic. So they can't read your messages or read your communications or be able to look at what's going on or impersonate you with your communication to that website, right? So that's basic encryption. That's widely deployed everywhere by this point. Now, there's a more advanced form of encryption called end-to-end encryption. And end-to-end encryption is so that you are communicating with your friend, and it's not so much about the service that a hacker, for instance, can impersonate, but with end-to-end encryption, you're able to ensure that your communications aren't being able to be seen by the service itself, and not being able to be impersonated by that service as well. So there are guarantees that end-to-end encryption really provides above and beyond basic encryption.
So I make sure I understand it. Basically, if you're in Signal, you write a message. When it goes out of the app, it kind of scrambles it up. And then when it gets to the person that you're sending it to, it unscrambles it and shows it to them. Does that sound right?
Yeah. And it's using public key cryptography, which is this advanced way of ensuring that there are keys that are generated on your device that allow that communication to happen. And those are stored on the device itself that you're holding in your hand and not on the Signal servers, for instance.
Anyone can download, if you have a smartphone, you can download it right from whatever app store. Protesters are using this in Minneapolis. As we discussed in the intro, is this still the most effective way to organize during a protest? Do you believe that Signal is the most effective way to organize, I guess? And is that what you would recommend vis-a-vis other products?
Yeah, so Signal is kind of widely considered by security experts and information security field in general to be the gold standard in end-to-end encryption and in communication security in general. And it's something that I see as, personally, as being the most secure option, especially for audiences that have access to it. Now, when you're in a protest situation, there could be, and there have been, situations where they cut off all internet access to a specific area. We haven't seen this recently, but this was part of the BART protests in San Francisco. And so if that happens, then you might not have access to signal at that particular time. So it's important to point that out as a caveat. And there might be other kind of more local options available.
So that's something they have the capacity. Government would have the capacity to do to people in order to eliminate the advantages you might get from being able to use that in a protest. How does it prevent outside surveillance better necessarily than Telegram, Discord, or WhatsApp? Those are the three that come to mind, but there are others that are out there.
WhatsApp employs the Signal protocol, so it's able to scramble messages and send them and unscramble in the same way as Signal is. But in terms of the emphasis, they prioritize usability over the encryption and safety. And that means, for instance, that they'll make certain choices like, not having your backups for your chats encrypted by default. And that will completely circumvent the protection that you get from an app like Signal. So Signal, you're going to have all of your defaults, all of your settings as secure as possible right out of the box. And WhatsApp, it can do that, but it's not going to have those settings enabled and locked down just as you're downloading it. There's got to be a lot of ways in which you can trip over the settings and not have your communication secure.
So when it came to Minneapolis, one of the concerns about Signal I saw come out of that came after Alex Preddy was killed. About an hour later, this guy named Cam Higbee started posting screen recording videos, scrolling through different Signal chats, showing who's in there. You saw all kinds of people jump in on it, trying to make amateur identifications of who might be in it, that sort of thing. So one of the things that people that we saw were talking about that we wanted to, try to make an episode to help people understand the reality about is the idea of infiltration. There's different kinds of Signal group chat links you can send. There's, publicly shared links, privately shared links. But when it comes to infiltration or this idea that maybe the police might join your Signal chat or one of these influencers who seeks to get the police to crack down on you joins into it, or a counter organizer, whoever it may be, how real is that risk? Does it have anything to do with the app itself or sort of how it's used? Or help me understand that.
This is a situation where you're adding someone to a chat and they can be someone who you're not intending to actually add to the chat, right? You need to make sure that you're vetting that person. And as the national security advisor, Mike Waltz, found out when he mistakenly added chief editor of The Atlantic to a group chat, you need to make sure that you're actually adding the people that you expect to be adding, right? So it's important to kind of do that vetting, and because otherwise you can have that situation where your messages are inadvertently leaked and posted all over The Atlantic's website for the case of the current administration. Yeah, and also I think it's important to point out that we want to have people actually using the official Signal app, because they're not. The other aspect of that story is that there was this third-party app that the administration was using, and that app was also kind of storing all their backups onto a third-party server. So something that you really want to make sure that you're using official software and not some kind of clone of the official software.
There may not be a correct answer to this, but let's say Minneapolis is happening in your neighborhood, and I don't just mean the cold. You want to organize a large group of people very quickly. Is there really anything you can do about that other than a public-facing link to kind of just get people to, on the same page? I mean, other than perhaps spelling out some rules of engagement and just to make people realize that, like, hey, what you post on here could create problems for you. This is a public-facing link. I mean, is there anything else that they can do to avoid, falling into the hands of these, far-right agitators or the FBI? What can you do when you need to organize a group of people in a neighborhood fairly quickly? I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like there's an easy answer.
Yeah, I think that there is this inherent problem with you're trying to publicize an event and make people aware of it, but yet you're trying to keep out those that might be trying to disrupt it or to, have a negative influence on what you're trying to do. And so I don't think that there is a technological solution. That's more of like a social problem, and social problems don't have technical solutions, right? They have social solutions that kind of is kind of inherent with the way that you're trying to organize that.
That's not what our AI overlords have been telling me, but I'll take your word for it, Bill.
But it seems to me, I mean, this is just a hypothesis from me, and I'm not an expert. I'm just one of the hosts of Posting Through It. But it seems to me that perhaps people should make distinctions publicly, make distinctions, hey, this is a public-facing group, and just be very clear about that, and just say there are certain risks involved with that. Private groups can break off into, their thing that are carefully vetted, and public-facing groups just to make rules, and wherever you're posting it, be it Blue Sky or X, God forbid, or wherever else, just to say, like, hey, just be a little careful about this. This one, this is potentially that, but instructions will be given here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, giving those caveats to a public-facing group, I think that, people tend to think that, oh, this is Signal, so this is secure. And it is in one sense. It's technically secure, but it's not socially secure. It's going to be posted to everyone that was added to that group, right? If you say something in a group that has a member of law enforcement in it, then that message is going to be delivered to that person. You don't necessarily, not necessarily going to be divulged your identity. Your identity might be kept secret, but that message and the fact that someone posted, a message in that group saying, let's do criminal activity X will be let out. And at that point, so it's important to make sure that the parameters of a group that you're being added to. So if it's a group that has all of its members well vetted for, then that's a very different situation than, hey, I just got added to a group of 600 people that are going to post updates on where they supposedly saw ICE.
Speaking of law enforcement, this is another question that sort of sticks out with me that it could be useful to get some clarity on. The messages, you've explained are end-to-end encrypted, right? So the likelihood that they set up an antenna and yank it out, the way they might a standard text message or a phone call or something may be more limited. But what kind of ways could law enforcement access Signal chat records? Because the leak of the chat groups in Minneapolis that I mentioned earlier, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, went on a podcast a couple days later and was like, I saw those tweets and we're opening an investigation. I guess I'm curious just how much risk are the people in those group chats actually facing from the FBI at this point? Like what can they do?
There's a number of ways, and I'm just going to take the first part of that question, a number of ways in which your chats can be divulged, even if Signal itself isn't compromised. And one of those instances is having a piece of spyware that has targeted you being installed on your device, right? So we know of some of these pieces of spyware like Pegasus
Right.
and
Yeah.
other, kind of these state-sponsored malware attacks. And they have specifically targeted human rights defenders, political opponents of, say, the Peña Nieto regime in Mexico. There's been Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist that was targeted. And by and large, these are extremely targeted attacks, and they're not deploying this to a wide swath of society. Why? Well, they would love to, but they know that once they start mass deploying these vulnerabilities that they use to get into people's devices, that there's some traces, some indicators that that's happened. And right now, the developers of those pieces of spyware are in kind of a cat and mouse game with the Apples and Googles of the world. And that's why when your phone says you have a security update, it's important to install that security update because it's going to patch some of those vulnerabilities that the NSO group uses, for instance, to bundle into Pegasus malware and compromise your device. And likewise, spyware on the one hand is something that's going to be a way in which someone's device gets compromised by a remote hacker, just by merit of it being on the internet. But there's this other side of it. If your device is seized, if you're arrested and your device is taken away from you, then they can take that device and plug it into a forensic imaging piece of hardware. The two main vendors of this are Magnet Forensics, that produces a piece of hardware called the Gray Key, and another vendor is Cellebrite, who produces a piece of hardware called the Universal Forensic Extraction Device. And once a cop or whatever plugs your device into one of these forensic imagers, it'll try different combinations of your passphrases just to get into that device. And then once it's able to crack your device passphrase, then all bets are off. It can take a whole image of your disk. It can see the messages that you've sent. It can see your images and videos, medical data that's stored on the device, crypto keys for your Bitcoin or whatever.
Bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's one of the reasons why it's important to kind of practice data minimalization. That if you are afraid of what your phone actually holds being divulged, then don't bring it to that protest. Don't bring it to a situation where you're at risk of getting detained because it could fall into the wrong hands and have all that data extracted from it.
A follow-up, again, thinking about the leak of Signal chats in Minneapolis and what happened there. Let's assume, and I don't know if this is true or not, that nobody in these Signal chats they have custody of and made were able to crack into a phone and take a copy of the disk. They just have, video recordings of screenshots inside the Signal app. You've got usernames, user profile pictures, copies of the messages. Is there a way the FBI can figure out who is in these chats? Like, can they subpoena Signal or will the company give up those records?
So what the FBI or federal law enforcement or even local law enforcement can do is they can use traditional police work. And, if they have a, leaked document or just a copy of someone's Signal username, then, they might ask or just might try to corroborate that with, someone else that knows a person and they know that their Signal name is X, Y, or Z. The power of subpoena only goes so far in that what Signal doesn't have, they can't give over. And just as there's data minimization when it comes to us protecting our own devices, Signal employs data minimization in that they don't retain records longer than they have to just to make that communication possible. And so what we've seen, and you can go to signal.org/bigbrother to kind of see some of these law enforcement requests, is that they have access to, for instance, when an account was created and what the last time that account was logged into. But they don't really have information beyond that because they don't retain it. They throw it out. They don't keep it in the first place. They employ strict data minimization in order to ward off the possibility that their users will become vulnerable to, law enforcement requests or even hacks. If their servers are hacked, then a remote hacker could get access to who is who and any records that they have. So they try to make sure that that doesn't happen by simply not having those requests, that data to give over.
My last question for you, Bill. Do you listen to techno? What kind of music do you like? We listen to a lot of techno around here, thanks to Mike.
Does krautrock count as techno?
Okay, yes. Okay. Now we're here. You listen to Can? You fuck with Can?
I love Can. I love Can.
All right. Okay, now we got three.
That was Suzuki. Yeah.
Okay,
Can was great.
Faust, you fucking.
I need my vitamin C and Faust and Tangerine Dream.
Wow, yeah,
Dream.
Okay, I get down with that.
Deep cuts.
Well, I love Tangerine Dream.
We got a real one here, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. We should make sure he gets the free premium subscription that comes with being a guest, because we do album recs at the end of those episodes. Bill, thank you so much for coming, and hopefully this has been a valuable service to our listeners, particularly as the summer months start approaching. We're getting to the spring, summer. There are going to be a lot of people on the streets, and
my pleasure.
I hope everybody is watching out for themselves and listening to this and thinking about how they can protect themselves with Signal.